Imagine walking into Walmart and seeing your invention sitting right there on aisle 12. The fluorescent lights are buzzing, the price tag is perfectly aligned, and like a customer is actually putting your life's work into their shopping cart.
Oh, man. I mean, for anyone with a product-based business, that is the ultimate dream, right?
Exactly. It's undeniable proof that you have finally made it. But here is the harsh reality if you are listening to this and mapping out your own retail empire.
Right.
Thousands of companies march up to Walmart's gates every single year, and the vast majority are just instantly rejected, sent packing.
Yeah, the fortress walls are incredibly high. And, they're high by design.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into tearing down those walls. We're unpacking a really comprehensive guide on exactly how to get a product placed in Walmart.
And this guide was published by the retail management consultancy Retailbound.
Right, and the reason we're diving into this specific material today is the author, Johann Jacob. Because he isn't just, some consultant theorizing from the sidelines. He is actually a former retail buyer.
Which totally changes everything about the advice we're looking at.
It really does.
Instead of getting just a standard marketing pitch, we're getting like a psychological profile of the gatekeepers. We're looking right through the eyes of the people making the actual purchasing decisions.
Which means we get to understand their fears, their metrics, and what they value above all else. So if you are an entrepreneur, or honestly even just someone fascinated by how the modern supply chain actually works.
Which is fascinating in itself.
Yeah, totally. This gives you the cheat code. But before we get into the tactics of how to get a buyer to say yes, we have to do a bit of a rejection reality check.
Yeah, we have to start with the bad news.
The source material makes it brutally clear that buyers just default to no. And it isn't because they don't like your product necessarily. It comes down to extreme risk aversion.
Right, because a retail buyer at a massive corporation is not, they're not a venture capitalist.
No, definitely not.
A venture capitalist takes a gamble on a cool new idea, hoping, 1 in 10 pays off. But a retail buyer's job is to act essentially as a real estate manager.
Well, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, they have a finite amount of shelf space, and their entire performance is judged by how much revenue they can generate per square foot of that exact space.
Wow, so no pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you walk in with a product that has no proven sales track record and no demonstrated mass market appeal, you're asking them to take a massive professional gamble. They simply will not do it.
They need a sure thing, or at least like the closest thing to it.
Precisely.
And the guide points out that even if you have an incredible proven product, you can still blow it instantly with a weak presentation. The source notes that a shocking number of vendors walk into these highly coveted meetings completely unprepared.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right, like they don't have hard data, the value proposition is muddy, and they end up wasting the buyer's time.
Which is the one thing a buyer has less of than shelf space. I mean, the expectation is extreme professionalism from second one.
Yeah.
If a brand can't articulate exactly why a customer will pull their product off the shelf instead of the competitor's product sitting right next to it, the meeting is just over.
Because the buyer isn't going to do the critical thinking for you.
No, not at all.
That brings up a concept from the guide that I found really fascinating, which is packaging as the silent salesperson. It really makes you think about packaging differently.
It's definitely not just a box to hold your item.
No. If the design doesn't immediately stand out or communicate value, the product goes nowhere. It feels very similar to, like, swiping on a dating app.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You could have the most innovative, life-changing product inside that box, but if the first visual impression is blurry, confusing, or just boring...
They're swiping left?
Exactly, they are swiping left.
And you have about 3 seconds to make that impression. Because the buyer isn't just looking at your box in a vacuum on a nice conference room table.
Right, they're picturing it in the store.
Yeah, they are mentally placing it onto aisle 12, right next to 5 giant legacy competitors who have, million-dollar design budgets.
Which is intimidating.
Very. But the silent salesperson concept goes even deeper than just looking pretty. It's about compliance and retail reality. Like, does the packaging physically fit on the standard Walmart shelf?
Oh, logistical stuff.
Exactly. And does it clearly explain what the product is to a consumer walking by at normal speed? If the consumer has to pick up the box and read a whole paragraph of text just to understand why they need it, the design has failed.
That makes total sense. Then there is the financial side of the rejection reality check. The guide highlights pricing mistakes as this massive pitfall.
Oh, yeah. The pricing math is where so many dreams just die.
And the way it's framed in the guide is that brands usually fail in one of two directions. They either overestimate what Walmart is willing to pay them at wholesale, or they underestimate what the end consumer is willing to pay at retail.
Right.
So it sounds like a vendor has to serve two completely different masters at the exact same time in a very narrow window.
That is the ultimate high-wire act of retail math. I mean, your pricing model has to work for the massive corporate machine and the everyday shopper simultaneously.
Right. Walk me through that. Let's break down the mechanics.
Okay, say you have a gadget that costs you $5 to manufacture. You want to sell it at retail for $20? You think, great, $15 of profit.
They're like a solid business.
But Walmart requires a specific, non-negotiable profit margin for themselves. Let's say they demand a 40% margin.
Okay, so they're only going to pay you $12 for that gadget.
Right. And suddenly, your $15 of profit is down to $7. And out of that $7, you still have to pay for shipping, packaging, your own team, and marketing.
Wow, that shrinks fast.
It really does. And if you try to fix your shrinking profit by telling Walmart to sell the gadget for $30 instead of $20, you hit a brick wall with the second master, the Walmart shopper.
Because they want the everyday low price.
Exactly. That consumer walks into the store expecting a deal. They won't pay $30 for a $20 item.
Right.
So your math doesn't thread that exact needle, protecting the retailer's margin while delivering obvious value to the consumer. The buyer rejects you immediately.
Which means having a gorgeous package and a slick pitch is completely useless if the underlying mechanics of your business are broken. You just can't fake the math.
You really can. And this transitions us perfectly from external presentation right into internal operations.
Okay.
The guide emphasizes that before you ever try to contact a buyer, you must undergo a brutal internal audit. And the first phase of this is assessing your retail readiness.
Which, if you're a founder listening to this, you might think retail readiness just means having enough boxes in a warehouse.
Right, but the source digs way deeper into the logistics. Buyers expect vendors to have ironclad answers on payment terms, packaging and shipping logistics, production capacity, and even comprehensive retail marketing plans.
So the buyer is essentially testing your operational maturity.
Exactly. If they ask about your payment terms and you just stare back blankly, or if they ask how your pallets are configured for their regional distribution centers and you say you'll figure it out later,
You're dead in the water.
you are signaling that you are an amateur. Doing this homework, having your logistics mapped out, and anticipating those operational questions is the invisible armor that actually makes a supplier stand out from the pack.
It's the difference between showing a buyer a shiny picture of a race car versus proving to them you actually have an entire pit crew ready to keep it running for a 500-lap race.
Oh, that is a great way to frame it.
Yeah.
Really accurate. And the second phase of this internal audit brings us back to the math. Developing a profitable pricing strategy at scale.
Right, because we touched on the margin squeeze a moment ago, but the guide insists that you have to account for every single hidden expense.
Because earlier, we only subtracted the obvious things. But the source lists manufacturing, packaging, distribution, logistics, marketing spend, promotional spend, sales commissions, and fees.
It is death by 1,000 paper cuts, if you aren't careful.
Literally.
But let me push back on this a bit, because if I am a small business owner listening right now, I have to ask, why on earth would I fight so hard and jump through all these logistical hoops to get into a store where I am guaranteed to make significantly less profit per item?
That's a fair question.
Like smaller boutique retailers offer much better margins, doesn't chasing a Walmart deal actually risk hurting my bottom line?
That is the most common and arguably the most valid concern any growing brand has. But the guide counters this through the principle of scale.
Okay, scale.
Yes, if you're sold to a local boutique, you might make $10 of profit per unit instead of $3. You're making more money on a single transaction.
Yeah.
But Walmart offers the one thing the boutique cannot. World-class, unprecedented volume.
So you basically trade margin for volume.
Exactly. You trade a high margin on 100 units for a low margin on 100,000 units.
Which makes sense.
The sheer volume of sales across thousands of stores is supposed to make up for the lower per unit profit. But the critical warning in the source material is that this volume only works in your favor if you have meticulously calculated every single hidden cost.
Because if the math is wrong, the volume just destroys you.
Precisely. If you miscalculate your freight cost by just 50 cents a unit and Walmart orders 100,000 units, You didn't just lose 50 cents.
Oh, wow.
You just accidentally signed up to lose $50,000.
That is terrifying.
It is. If your logistics are messy, massive volume doesn't accelerate your profits. It accelerates your losses. It speeds up your bankruptcy.
Wow.
That is why operational readiness has to be a completely bulletproof before you even think about outreach.
Okay, so let's assume your house is in perfect order. Your margins are tight, your supply chain is resilient, your packaging is brilliant.
Dream scenario.
The next massive hurdle is visibility. I mean, you can't just cold email a Walmart buyer and expect a reply. They probably get 1,000 emails a day. So how do you actually infiltrate their ecosystem and get them to notice you?
The guide outlines a tactical playbook for this, focusing heavily on navigating the complex web of retail relationships.
Which is all about who you know, right?
Partially, yes.
Right.
The first major strategy is showing up where the buyers are already looking, starting with industry trade shows.
The advice here is pretty straightforward. Exhibit where your industry gathers. The example they provide is like, if you are selling an iPhone accessory, you have to be at CES in Las Vegas.
Right, because buyers use trade shows to hunt. Their guard is down slightly because they are actively looking for the next big trend to fill their shelves.
Makes sense.
If you aren't on the floor at the major events for your category, you are signaling that you aren't a serious player yet. And alongside trade shows, the guide emphasizes trade publications. Buyers actually read these industry magazines. Securing a positive feature or a review in a major trade publication adds massive third-party credibility.
It warms up any future outreach you do, but the guide also acknowledges that you don't necessarily have to kick the door down yourself. It mentions partnering with distributors, especially if you are a single product vendor.
Oh, this is a powerful hack for reducing friction. A Walmart buyer doesn't necessarily want to set up an entirely new vendor account in their massive corporate system just for one single SKU.
Because it's a huge administrative headache.
Exactly. But if you partner with a distributor who is already an approved vendor selling products into Walmart, you can piggyback on their established relationship.
You still have to convince the buyer that your product is great, but the logistical hurdle of getting into the system is already cleared.
Which is half the battle.
Now, what about manufacturer representatives? The source brings them up, but it felt like a bit of a double-edged sword to me.
Yeah, manufacturer reps are mercenaries in the best way possible. They open doors because they already have deep, established relationships with the buyers.
So they know exactly who to call.
Exactly. And they work on commission, which aligns their incentives with your sales. But the guide includes a stark warning. These reps represent multiple brands simultaneously.
Meaning they are naturally going to prioritize the brands generating the largest commission checks for them.
Right.
So if your product is a slow mover early on, or you are just getting started, you might sink to the bottom of their priority list and just get ignored.
Exactly. You are outsourcing your relationship building, which means you lose a degree of control.
That makes sense.
Another more organic route the guide suggests is the classic referral. If you know a current successful Walmart supplier, leverage that relationship. A warm email introduction from someone who already makes the buyer money is infinitely more powerful than a cold outreach campaign.
Now, out of all the tactics in the guide, the one that really stood out to me as like a modern growth hack is utilizing the Walmart marketplace, meaning actually selling your product on walmart.com first.
Yes. This is arguably the most effective entry point available today because it leverages data over promises.
It makes complete sense. If we think about it like baseball, selling on the website is like playing in the minor leagues.
I love that comparison.
Right. You use the online marketplace to build up your stats. You gather hundreds of positive customer reviews. You prove that your shipping logistics actually work. And you demonstrate strong month-over-month sales velocity.
Yeah.
You are essentially building a portfolio to prove to the scouts, the in-store buyers, that you are ready to be called up to the major leagues, the physical shelves.
And the beauty of this minor league strategy is how much it de-risks the proposition for the buyer. Giving you physical shelf space in 4,000 stores is a massive risk.
A huge risk.
But allowing you to sell on Walmart.com costs them virtually nothing in physical real estate. And as you build those stats, the algorithm notices.
Wow, okay.
The source confirms that if you perform exceptionally well online, sometimes the in-store buyers will actually be the ones to contact you. You don't have to chase them because you've already proven you can win within their own ecosystem.
So let's play this out. You exhibited at the big trade show in Vegas. You crushed your numbers on the online marketplace. You get a warm intro. You land the meeting, and you deliver a flawless presentation with your silent salesperson packaging.
It's a perfect storm.
And the buyer looks at the numbers and says, yes, you are in. You did it.
It's an incredible moment. But the source material throws cold water on the celebration pretty quickly.
Of course it does.
Securing the deal is a massive victory, but what happens immediately after that meeting dictates your long-term survival. The final sections of the guide deal heavily with the psychology of the partnership.
And this centers around following through and taking your time. The guide states that buyers value reliability exactly as much as they value product quality. That seems like a pretty bold claim. Exactly as much.
Think about the buyer's own career. If they champion your product, convince their bosses to give you premium shelf space, and then you failed to deliver, you haven't just hurt your brand.
Oh, I see.
You have actively damaged the buyer's internal reputation. If you promise to send a revised sample by Tuesday and it arrives on Thursday, you are signaling to that buyer that you are a loose cannon.
Which they hate.
The guide is blunt. Vendors who fail to follow up on the small promises rarely get a second chance to make good on the big ones. Consistency builds trust, and trust is the only foundation for a long-term retail relationship.
Which perfectly sets up the final piece of advice in the guide. Take your time. Breaking into Walmart shouldn't be rushed. You have to ensure your operations can truly scale to meet the demand.
Absolutely crucial.
But if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a founder sitting across the table from a buyer who just offered me the Holy Grail, wouldn't I just take the deal and figure out the logistics later? I mean, how could saying yes to Walmart ever be a bad thing?
That is the most dangerous trap in all of retail. Let's synthesize everything the guide warns about regarding production capacity and supply chain readiness and walk through the nightmare scenario.
Okay, lay it on me.
You say yes, and the buyer places an order for 500,000 units to stock their stores nationwide for a summer rollout.
Sounds like the ultimate win.
Right, but your overseas manufacturing facility can only reliably produce 50,000 units a month.
Oh, no.
Yeah. You panic. You try to source a secondary factory at the last minute. The quality drops. The shipping containers get delayed at the port, and you try to air freight the rest at a massive financial loss.
Just a total disaster.
And despite all that scrambling, you only deliver half the order 2 weeks late. You have just created empty shelf space across the entire country for Walmart. And empty shelf space is a retail buyer's worst nightmare.
Because they're losing money every second it's empty.
Exactly. The store managers complain to corporate because their aisles look bare. You have completely destroyed your brand's reputation.
You broke the golden rule of reliability.
You break it on a massive scale. And in doing so, you don't just lose this deal, you effectively burn the bridge forever. You are blacklisted.
Wow.
Rushing into a big box deal before your supply chain is fully mature can literally bankrupt a company and destroy years of hard work in a single season.
That is a staggering reality check for anyone with dollar signs in their eyes.
Yeah.
So to bring this all together for you listening, getting your product onto the shelves of the world's largest retailer requires so much more than just a brilliant invention.
It really does.
It is a grueling, mathematically unforgiving process. It requires bulletproof packaging that sells itself in 3 seconds. It requires a pricing strategy that survives impossibly tight corporate margins while still appealing to everyday shoppers.
Yep. It requires strategic networking to bypass the slush pile. And above all, it requires the operational patience to know when you are truly ready for the big leagues.
It is an immense challenge. But as the Retailbound guide outlines, it is a navigable one if you respect the underlying mechanics of the process. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Based on that nightmare scenario we just discussed about rushing into a big box deal.
Yeah, let's hear it.
As entrepreneurs, or even just in our personal lives, we almost always view rejection as a failure. A buyer saying no feels like a closed door.
Sure, nobody likes hearing no.
But considering the immense supply chain pressure, the razor-thin margins, and the absolute demand for flawless execution at a scale like Walmart, what if a buyer's early no is actually the very thing that saves a small business from accidentally bankrupting itself?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the script.
Right.
Sometimes the guards at the gate aren't just trying to keep you out. They are doing you a favor by keeping you out until you have the armor required to actually survive inside the fortress.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you are walking down aisle 12 at a major retailer, take a close look at the products sitting quietly on those shelves.
There's a whole story behind every single box.
Knowing what you know now about the absolute gauntlet of math, logistics and psychology they had to survive just to sit there, I guarantee you will look at them a little differently. Catch you next time.